Wait a second, we can do better than that. Quiet bell today. Anyways, there's the bell. Hello, fellow Rotarians. My name is Reed Miller, and I am your president of the Rotary Club of Portland. Welcome to our weekly membership meeting. I will now ask that you all virtually stand and join me in reciting the four-way tests. Number 1, is it the truth? Number 2, is it fair to all concerned? And number 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Number 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you all. At this time, I will ask any Rotarians who have invited a guest to please raise a hand so that you can introduce your guest to the club. If you are a visiting Rotarian who came on your own, please raise your hand and introduce yourself, or let us know that you're here in the chat box. Do we have any guests with us today?
Ellen, did I see you raise your hand? All right, Ellen.
Yes, I'm a visiting Rotarian from Lake Oswego Rotary. A regular visitor, I would say.
Absolutely. Welcome back, Alan. Glad to have you today, and hope you come back and join us again in the future. And of course, thank you to all of our members joining us here today for another Zoom meeting. Can you believe tomorrow is September? This weekend will be Labor Day weekend, a favorite weekend for many. One of the 2 3-day weekends we can all count on every year. Labor Day comes during a time when the Northwest can usually count on excellent weather. Well, usually. For me, Labor Day has a bit of a different meaning. 1 year ago today, my wife went into labor. To the day. And on Friday, my son Warren will be turning 1 year old. Yes, for those of you that can do math, that is a lot of labor, a whole lot of labor. However, my wife prevailed and gave birth to a healthy baby boy. And 1 year later, I can assure you, it has been a labor of love. Labor Day has historically been a weekend where you can pretty much count on finding me at a lake. This year, we'll be hosting his first birthday party outside. Sure, I'll miss out on a day at the lake, but I certainly won't miss out on my son smashing his first cake. I most definitely will not miss out on my son getting his first happy birthday song or opening presents for the first time. You see, life is full of curveballs. When a curveball is first identified, it's inconvenient or maybe even scary. However, once you've learned how to hit a curveball, they're just another opportunity to adapt, to change, and embrace something different. It's everything I have for our opening, and I'd like to now welcome Rotarian Susan Cooksey, who will be presenting this week's reflection. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you. I changed my reflection this morning at 11 a.m. As a retired member of the military, I'm left with mixed emotions as the current situation in Afghanistan evolves. I'd prepared a quote from Gandhi, which I will present at another time. I changed to a more hopeful reflection. As a disabled person, the Paralympics gave me hope that there could be a more active life after disability. For the non-disabled, it shows that people with disabilities had faced their disabilities head on. I encourage everyone to watch the Paralympics to see the individuals that did not let a disability define them. It is a story of individuals who are back into the mainstream of life. I am encouraged by their abilities, not focused on their disabilities.
Here I am. That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Susan. I appreciate that. That was uplifting and something to look forward to and something for all to pay attention to. So I look forward to watching the Paralympics. Thank you, Susan. If anybody else is interested in giving a reflection in the future, we would certainly appreciate it. And you can reach out to Susan, who is in charge of scheduling the reflections. Her email, as Skylar will put in the chat, is 2navycaptains@gmail.com. Thank you so much, Skylar. Thank you so much, Susan. And now on to our birthdays for the month. This will be the last time for recognition for birthdays in the month of August. Skylar, could you show us the birthdays for August? All right, happy birthday to all of our August birthdays. Susan, happy birthday. Dev, happy birthday. Who else are we missing in here? Didn't notice anybody else. Well, happy birthday to everybody this month. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to introduce Rotarian Nihad Awida for another reminder about our upcoming golf tournament.
So I've been told what you focus on expands. So I'm trying to focus on the golf event. And I want to tell you, it's a labor of love and or lust or whatever you want to call it. It's some kind of a labor, but it's not childbirth labor. So guys, our event just around the corner after Labor Day weekend is on Thursday, September 9th at Langdon Farms. Mr. Bazaz, I would like to invite you and the rest of your club to come and join us. I know you are in the Lake Oswego Club. Would love to see you there. It is just a skip and a hop over the freeway to be at Langdon Farms.
Thank you.
It is at 1:30. It is only $130 or $130. We are going to provide you with dinner, fun, cards, and some prizes. And you don't have to be a good golfer. You have to focus on that you're going to hit the ball and it's going to go straight. That's what I'm going to ask you guys to do. And Mr. Blake, I'm going to deliver some hummus for your home later on today because you're down the street from me. So I'll talk to you guys later. And please, tomorrow is the cutoff day and I hope you'll join us.
Nihad, would you be kind enough to send an email so I can distribute to our club?
Your wish is my command.
Thank you.
I'll get your email from later on, or you can text me your email.
I'll just text it to you.
My phone number is 503-939-6666. Thank you, Mr.
Put it in the
Bazaz.
chat.
Okay, thank you.
There we go. Let's work on that in the chat. Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you, Alan. We appreciate you passing that message along to your club. Thank you so much, Nihad, for that update. As you all heard, for me, the most important part of that was the deadline is tomorrow to get signed up for our golf tournament. I have written down right here, Nihad, I'm all over it. I'll be there. I look forward to the golf tournament every year. It's a great event. Thank you so much, Nihad, for coordinating. And now, Project 2020 donor recognition. I would like to welcome Rotary Club of Portland Vice President Maria Schell to say a few words about the upcoming Project 2020 donor recognition event. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you, President Reed. And I just wanted to share, for those of you, you've heard about this for, gosh, going on the last year, and we have been postponing, but we as a club have done an amazing job with Project 2020. We were able to raise $500,000 in support of Morrison, and we have created the Rotary Youth Center up at Morrison. And so we have now chosen to do a donor recognition event following all of the health guidelines and protocols. We will be doing this outdoors. It will be at the end of September, the 23rd. For those of you who were contributors to Project 2020, you should have received a personal email from me earlier this week. You'll be getting a follow-up from me as well. So we're really appreciative of all of the donors, over 100 of you who made contributions to get to our $500,000 in support of the Rotary Youth Center. And we wanted to do this really just as a moment to say thank you, to recognize your generosity. And like I said, we had meant to do this a little over a year ago, and we've just been postponing, and we've said now is the time. And for those of you who have already shared with me that some of you are on the East Coast, some of you are traveling, some of you have doctor's appointments, I'm going to be following up with many of you because I know Drew and Deanna over at Morrison would still love to show you the wonderful impact of your generosity. And so we'll be able to work out some other opportunities if that September 23rd date just doesn't work for you. But we are so appreciative to all 100+ of you who made a gift during Project 2020. And if you could, Skylar, throw the RSVP link in the chat for those of you who are donors, if you could just sign up and register so that we know how many nibbles to purchase and things like that, that would be wonderful. And we really appreciate all of you. And I'm saying this on behalf of Drew, who I can see him doing this over in the corner, but Morrison is really excited to have us. So thank you all.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Maria. Appreciate the update there. I'm looking forward to the event. That should be a lot of fun. I cannot wait to see the actual building itself and everything that went into that. I mean, it was fun seeing that come together and then finally get completed, and very exciting to hear about the uses that are being used and how much that's been appreciated. So it'll be really fun to get out there and actually see it in person. So thank you so much, Maria. Thanks a lot, Drew. And now, my fellow Rotarians, I am excited to introduce to you yet another new member of the U40 cohort, Melissa Cohen. Melissa, please take a moment to introduce yourself to the club. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you, Reed. Hi, everybody. My name is Melissa Cohen. I am a commercial closer with Old Republic Title here in town. And I came into commercial real estate from spending almost a decade in the law. And I really, really missed the civic engagement portion of working in the law. So I joined Portland Rotary in hopes of finding a place where I can put time towards service and giving back to my community. I'm an immigrant from Singapore, and so I'm really in tune with the immigrant community here in town. 40 committee, also just joined Enterprise Academy committee, and hopefully more committees to come. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Melissa. I want you to know that we believe becoming a member of Rotary reflects how you conduct your personal and professional life. We all share your drive to give back, and I'm looking forward to you using your skills and your talents to make a difference in your community, as well as to connect with your fellow Rotarians. Everyone, please welcome your fellow Rotarian, the newest Rotarian in the world, Melissa Cohen. Welcome, Melissa. All right, Rotarians, it is now time for our breakout room. You're going to enter a room with a few of your fellow Rotarians. Please introduce yourselves to the others in your group. And about a minute or so before you come back to this main meeting, you will get a notification that your breakout room is ending in about 60 seconds. For today's breakout room, if you need a topic of discussion, like always, you're happy to discuss whatever you'd like, but if you need a topic of discussion, let's talk about the best curveballs of your life. Okay, we'll see you back here in just a few minutes. Thank you. All right, welcome back, fellow Rotarians. Hope you all had a great conversation in your breakout room. I certainly enjoyed the opportunity to interact with the fellow Rotarians. We had some great conversations. And now, please welcome your chair of the day, Rotarian Will Nolan. Welcome, Will.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to all of the Rotarians and especially the guests here. I'm very excited to have Blake speaking with us today. Members will, of course, recognize him. He's a very active member of our club in U40 and Oregon Ethics and Business, and is on the board of directors actually right now. Blake is originally from Southern Oregon, Jacksonville, I think. He went to college at the University of Dallas, where he played baseball for 4 years and was, of course, the captain of the baseball team. He got his degree in political philosophy and then started his real estate career in Dallas as well. He worked for the Fisher Corporate Real Estate Company for several years, but has been back in Portland now for a while and serves as a principal for Cressa Realty and is the leader of the Portland office. He is married, has 3 undoubtedly very active boys, but it was his reputation as a thoughtful and engaged Rotarian that led me to listen to his podcast a few weeks ago. The podcast series is called Think Beyond Space, and it'll be starting its second season this October. And if you find today's talk informative, I encourage you to subscribe to it. And this is, by the way, unsolicited and unpaid endorsement. But in the podcast that I listened to, Blake and his guest, Sean Connors, also of Cresa, discussed what they were seeing in the downtown office leasing market. Cresa has locations all across the US, which gives Blake a rather unique vantage point to see not only what is happening in Portland, but then compare it to like cities across the country. And as some of you may have noticed, downtown Portland is a rather challenging place right now. But what are businesses thinking and doing? Leases are a long-term critical decision. Are they staying put? Are they upsizing, downsizing, reconfiguring, or fleeing to the suburbs? I found that conversation interesting, and I hope you all do too. So with that, help me welcome Blake.
Wow, Will, that was very kind introduction. Thanks so much for having me, and it's great to see so many faces. I appreciate you listening to the podcast too. That was we just started that this year, and I got to tell you, I was a little bit apprehensive to start. Put yourself out there and ask guests to come on and talk for 30 minutes. But it's been really fun. It's been really fun. So we're looking forward to the second season. So. And Dev, also thank you for collaborating and having me on as well. Just really appreciate that. So there's so much to talk about, to be honest. There's what's seen in the news, what's heard in the rumor mills, what's actually happening. So I'll share my screen a little bit. I'm not going to be overly prescriptive. I'm not well, you can see my email, but let me pull up my office. There you go. Can you see that? Everybody see that? Okay. So I will first say that I'm not a data analyst. I am more of a experiential sort of discussion topic sharer, if you will. So I would hope that as I'm walking through some of these items, if you guys can ask questions in the chat box if something piques your fancy, or if you've heard something in the news that of a building or of a part of downtown or of one of the suburbs. Just I want this to be interactive, so I might stop as we go through this too and just ask if anybody has any questions. So a little bit of context. As Will said, I've been in the real estate business for 15 years, and I've been in Portland for 8. So half of my career, and I focus predominantly on office tenants. So I work with office tenants that are looking for office space up and down the West Coast. I manage portfolio accounts, which means one company and 50 locations versus 50 companies and one location. That's a way that you can think about it. So one of our biggest clients is Umpqua Bank. So wherever you see an Umpqua Bank up and down the West Coast, we represent them on lease negotiations and site selection across the entire portfolio, from admin space to retail space, ATM space, back office, and everything in between. We also have a project management arm too. So that helps build out the space. So we help negotiate and find the space, and then the space actually has to be built out and fit out with furniture and walls and everything else. And so we have a project management team that helps to do that. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about from a Cresa standpoint, but let's get into the actual market perspective. The last 18 months has been like a total standstill in Portland. And I think in the last 6 months, you've seen a little bit of that sort of come back a little, warm up a little bit. And then also if you look at Portland as an overall metro, there's various sort of submarkets. I'll call downtown is a submarket. Within downtown, you have the Pearl District, you have Slabtown, you have Goose Hollow, you have southern part of downtown, you have the Central East Side, you have close in Northwest. There's so many different sort of submarkets in that area, and every different pocket or submarket sort of has its own sort of feel, market dynamic. And then you go out into the suburbs and you have, obviously you've got Highway 26, Sunset Corridor is a submarket. You have the I-5 corridor, which is a submarket. You have Cruise Way. There's 100 million square feet of office space in the Portland metro. Okay, just as a context. If I look at Seattle, there's 235 roughly million square feet. In San Francisco, 185 roughly million square feet. So we're definitely almost half the size of either one of those from a size perspective. Pre-COVID, we got a lot of interest from California companies, Bay Area companies coming up to Portland. Talent is strong, right? Rents and cost of living is substantially different, better in most cases than San Francisco as well as Seattle. So we saw a lot of sort of in-migration of companies coming into town. And as most of you can imagine, most of that's come to a screeching halt. And I think not just in companies coming into town, but also just companies that are based in Portland that had decisions coming up, whether their leases were coming up or otherwise. A lot of those decisions were put on hold. And, I think as Will mentioned, most of these leases are 5, 7, 10-year commitments that companies make to a certain piece of real estate when they're leasing space. And when COVID hit, most of those companies either did a 1-year extension, maybe a 2-year extension based upon the size of their requirement, or frankly just said, you know what, like we don't need the space anymore and we'll work remotely until we figure this out. A lot of companies that are in smaller space, smaller size, call it 10 to 25, maybe even 50 people in an organization, could otherwise work remotely. And there was no reason for them to extend their commitments and do that during this, during all the uncertainty. And even still, we're in it. For those organizations that had a little bit bigger of a footprint, still needed to have a physical, presence, albeit nobody going into the office. A lot of those did, 1 or 2 year extensions. And matter of fact, we're already working on those projects now again, right? And this question is like, okay, do we now kick the can another year? Do we kick the can another 2 years, or do we now actually make the commitments? And so I'm not sure if you guys can, and by the way, I'll distribute this after the meeting, so everyone can have a chance to, this is a PDF document, but you can sort of see it. But since Q2 of 2021, we've had a 9% decrease in gross rents in downtown. Alternatively, we've had nearly a 10% increase in rents in Cruise Way. So I'm making the assumption that most people know where Cruise Way is in Lake Oswego. Hopefully that's a generally good assumption. And there's been multiple times in the last 18 months that really one landlord almost owns all of those projects, all those properties in Cruise Way. And they have raised their rates in COVID 3 times. Right? 3 times. Everywhere you're reading in the news is that, no one's going back to the office. Rents are getting depressed. No one's taking space. And in Cruise Way, they've raised their rates 3 times. Now, while they've done that, downtown Portland has had nearly 105% increase in sublease space. Sublease space is basically if you're a tenant in a building and you've got 5 years left on your lease and you no longer need that space anymore, you put that space on the sublease market, and hopefully a subtenant comes in and basically helps to mitigate your ongoing lease obligation. 100+% of sublease space coming on the market. And you know what? No one's backfilling those spaces. So you have the tremendous amount of sublease space in downtown that's coming on the market. Not to mention you have a lot of inventory that was planned, under construction, and then delivered in COVID, new buildings around town, right? So you have this mix mash of inventory, I've got crying kids in the background, but a slew of inventory of space that's on the market. No one's wanting to come and backfill it. The challenge too is that it's really tough to create demand and create velocity. So when we're negotiating projects and deals, again, you have a lot of companies or a lot of people are saying, well, I've been reading the news that the Portland market is just getting hit really hard. Well, it is, but landlords aren't going to artificially drop their rents unless their velocity and the requirement demands it. So if no one's coming to if nobody is coming to your space, if you drop the rents by $100,000, $200,000 a year, that's not necessarily going to create the demand that all of a sudden now your door is just knocking on people that are ready to come into your building. So it's just this very interesting dynamic that is going on between sort of institutional investors, which, by the way, in the past 5 years, there's been more institutional money that's coming into Portland that have bought these assets. And a lot of the buildings downtown, many on the skyline, have traded hands and have new owners in the last 5 years. Almost every single building that you can name that would be a tall building, called, for Portland, we'll call it a skyscraper, has traded hands, which means that institutional money comes in. They spend a lot of money and capital to make the common areas really nice, clean it up. They put lockers and showers and fitness centers and all these great bells and whistles, which means the rents go up, right? And so now you have a part where there's a lot of institutional money, rents are high, limited velocity of demand, and so we probably have another 24 to 36 months before some of that stuff's actually going to be secured. So that's sort of down. So you get the fact that there's a lot of inventory, then the fact that COVID hits, and so you have everyone's working remotely. Then you have the challenge, just sort of the unrest that happened last year, and then you have the other business and tax climate downtown in Multnomah County, and all those factors are leading to a really challenging dynamic in downtown. And so a lot of companies too are knocking on the door saying, well, do we want to be downtown now? Regardless of COVID, but from a tax perspective, does it make more sense for us to leave Multnomah County? And we've seen a couple groups do that. KinderCare is one. I'm sure many of you have read the news about KinderCare moving to Lake Oswego, and there's half a dozen others that have done that. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a fleeing to the suburbs yet. We have to wait to see what the trend looks like over time, but things don't look that great in downtown Portland as we work through some of these things. So here's just some basic stats and charts, and for those of you that like to look at bar charts and line charts, this might be really fascinating to you. But you can generally see, we were in a really strong trajectory. I think, in the last 10 years, we had a 40 to 45% increase in rental rates downtown. And which, by the way, we're still cheaper than, the Bay and Seattle. But then, as you can see, COVID has hit, and we've obviously have dropped in what that looks like. I was talking about sort of the corridors and the different submarkets within Portland that sort of make up the Portland area. Well, and let me go back to, so you have all these challenging pieces hitting downtown, and I didn't even mention the work from home and hybrid situation, right? And so that is the whole workplace strategy that has taken shape in the last 12 months. It has been incredible too. A lot of companies that were typically, one person to one desk in a lot of cases are now going to a hybrid model, and it's still yet to be determined how successful that hybrid model will be. But then that causes, so the question is like, okay, if I had, like, you think about KinderCare, if you had 85 to 90,000 square feet of office space, and now you need 50, that change of actual need in space obviously further contributes to the challenge of additional inventory in downtown. So this just gives you a general map of downtown is number 5, and then sort of the metro as a whole, and sort of where things are stacking up from a focal point perspective. Just a few highlights of companies that are. I would say there's one building in downtown that's it's in the Pearl that's been a little bit of a darling, I would say, and it's called Tanner Point. It's in the North Pearl District. It's a brand new building, and Ampere, which was founded by a woman who left Intel and is now in the chip business, Ampere is the name of the company. They took the top 2 floors of that building, and then they just recently expanded into two additional floors to be roughly about 75 to 100,000 square feet of space. There's been a lot of velocity in that building. Brainium is another group that took a full floor in that building. They're a tech company. And then On Running, if you guys are familiar with On Running, the running company, they put a corporate headquarters space in that same building. So, I mean, I can go through every building, that you've probably seen downtown and sort of tell you what's sort of going on. But you also see, some big things on here. Apple just took 50,000 square feet out in Hillsborough. Microsoft did the same thing earlier this year. They're just about to complete their space out in Hillsborough as well. A few notable things downtown. Lane Powell, a lot of the law firms are likely to stay downtown. Many did leases pre-COVID, and so they're still in their leases for another, 5-7 years. Lane Powell extended their lease over at Moda for some time. They're at 60,000 square feet. And then, there's just a lot of other sort of anecdotes that are scattered throughout. So I'm going to stop there for a quick second and see if anybody has any questions about the high level pieces and maybe some anecdotes that I might be able to share.
Yeah, like Melissa Cohen has a real interesting one. And for the people who are on the phone, I'll read it to you. She says, I'm curious what you're seeing in the foreign investment space. There's talk about interest in Portland because investors are priced out of the Bay and the Seattle area. But with COVID and the riots, is there confidence in investing in Portland as opposed to other similar markets?
So great question, Melissa. And I will say, also point you to a ULI report that came out earlier this year. I think it was don't take this for gospel, but it's fairly close. And I'll get the report out to the group too, if whoever would like it. But I think in 2019, Portland was seen as, maybe one of the top 7, certainly top 10, but so top 7 markets of interest from investors and investment capital. Since 2019, this has been 2 years. I think we've slipped to like 65 or 70. People are having a hard time, especially in downtown. Industrial is another question, right? Industrial real estate in the last 18 months, big box industrial real estate has been gangbusters, and it has biomedical space as well. But from an office investment perspective, Portland is having a tough time. We're having a tough time. We slid in that. Now I'll say, going back just quickly there's been a lot of biotech interest. So there's a group called Twist Biosciences out of the Bay Area. They took 200,000 square feet of office space in Wilsonville, the old Xerox campus, and they're building their factory of the future there, which is really pretty incredible. And that came together in really quickly. Absci as well. Absci is up in Vancouver. They, I'm sure some of you have seen, they just filed for IPO, and they're going to be growing like crazy as well. Zoom Info, they went public last year as well. They're looking for a lot of real estate. We are starting to see from a talent perspective and company perspective, we're seeing more and more IPOs or SPACs that are coming out of Portland, which I think is really encouraging.
Blake, Chris has a question he'd like to ask.
Yeah. You're on mute, Chris.
How do you see the evolution of some of these buildings? If large companies are downsizing their workforce or rotating their workforce so that they need half as much space as they used to, even if they stay downtown. Is there a potential for some of these buildings to evolve into a different form, different use, retail, residential, and do the costs even allow that to be considered?
Yeah, good question, Chris. One of the biggest questions was there's a 2-building complex that is in North Pearl called Field Office. if any of you have seen it, it's brand. They're effectively 2.5, 3 years ago, brand new buildings. It's 300,000 square feet, 150 roughly per building, office space. And that's where Ampere was. And then the Ampere left to go to Tanner Point. The reason I bring that up is the ownership group of field office looked to see, you know what, there's a lot of interest for biomedical space. Can we convert this office building into biomedical? Thinking about that. The cost prohibition to do that was pretty insane. I would say from an office, a traditional office building perspective, it's pretty cost prohibitive to change. Like if I'm a 30-story office building downtown, to change that, maybe the top stack, maybe to condos or hotel or multifamily, really tough to make that happen. So I think, from a cost perspective, it's just to recoup that is I think investors would rather just wait to see if they can fill it up with the office users, which will take, it will take years.
And Reed has a question for you.
Yeah, I'm curious if you think, if you see Vancouver becoming a little bit more of a hotspot with the development down at the waterfront and people, moving towards the suburbs, like you mentioned, what you're seeing out there.
Yeah. Vancouver, I mean, the challenge with Vancouver is it just has a lack of inventory. There's interest in Vancouver for sure, but there's just a lack of inventory. So, let's say you're looking for 50,000 square feet of space, let's just say, right? And so downtown, that might be 25,000 square feet, maybe the full floor of space downtown Portland. You probably have 50 options. I'm not kidding. 50 options probably within the downtown sort of core, right? East side, downtown, Pearl, North Pearl. In Vancouver, I think there's might be one, right? Like downtown Vancouver, the waterfront, that one, maybe two, if you're scratching and clawing and seeing if you can relocate somebody to maybe fit in. So it's just a lack of inventory. But that new project, the new project on the waterfront is just absolutely, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful.
Maria has a question for you, Maria.
Oh, I said it much nicer in the chat. Well, no, I had a question about your business, Blake. How do you work with like the WeWork central office type shared locations? And then I also wondered, is there any impact on that with all of the health and safety of shared locations? Like I know at my office, I can't bring in any external groups yet, just like current employees. So how are shared offices looking? It felt like it was on a rise, but maybe not. What are you seeing in that?
Yeah, it was on a rise, and then the debacle that happened with WeWork and their whole situation as a business model was really, I mean, this is in 2019. If people remember, they were thinking about filing for IPO, and then it was like a $50 billion IPO that got juiced down to like 8 billion, and there's all sorts of just disasters. As a matter of fact, WeWork has closed nearly all of their space in Portland, except for their space over at Lloyd. So they've closed Power and Light. They've closed Pioneer Square, Maria, right across from the Galleria, or not the Galleria, but Myron Frank Building. They've closed the Customs House, and they had plans to do more. But my office is actually in a central office in the Pearl. We're in the original central office in the Pearl. We have a little space there, and they're having a tough time. I do think though, as more people as more companies think about hybrid and think about work from home and remote, that I think that those companies and that model and that concept will have its day, because and what I'm hoping to see, honestly, is that more of those open up in the suburbs, to be honest with you. I mean, I've been thinking about it for a while. Like there's no co-working spaces, really. I live out in Cedar Hills, like out this way, but you have massive companies. I mean, them, Nike, Intel, Salesforce, Acumed. I mean, there's Genentech. There's so many big sort of Silicon Forest companies out here. There's no co-working spaces. And, a lot of people live out here, may not want to go to the office, but may not stay at home. So it's sort of a third place to go, right? There's actually a woman in Portland who is starting a company called Radius, and that's another so her, I'm going to butcher her piece, and she'd be a better person to share it, but it's almost a third place. So it's like, instead of Airbnb for an overnight, it's Airbnb for an office, right? So like, you can, if you don't want to stay in your house, you can rent someone else's backyard out, or you can rent someone else's Airstream out to do work for the day. And so just seeing that takes traction. But I think that those co-working spaces will have their day. But a lot of them are sort of having to go through restructure, and some of them were being purchased by other brokerage shops, or other groups. It's really interesting. I mean, it's a really fascinating.
Hey, do we have any other questions before we let Blake go?
Will does. Will has one.
Yeah, so Blake, I'm curious, with the rising rents. I'm on Cruiseway essentially, down here in Cruiseway versus versus downtown. Are we getting close to a parity in terms of the cost of being here versus downtown, including the tax issue that you have to pay in Multnomah County? Are we close to that, or how's that look?
Yeah, so if you are downtown, if you're in Lake Oswego, I imagine, if you're in a Shorenstein building on Cruiseway, if you sign a lease today, you're going to be roughly $40 a square foot. So I'll just do that may not mean anything to you, but let me just give you context. So if you're downtown and you're looking at the PacWest building, if people are familiar, or the Wells Fargo Tower, let's just say, or the US Bancorp Tower, right? You're going to be roughly $40 to $45 a square foot at those buildings. So we're damn near close from a rent perspective. Now, you get free parking, right? In Lake Oswego, you got to pay for parking downtown. So there's certainly elements of that. But what we are seeing too downtown is a lot of these landlords may not be reducing their face rents materially, but the incentive packages are pretty incredible. So if you're going to do called a 7 or a 10-year lease, and you've got some credit behind your name, we're seeing triple-digit tenant improvement dollars, which means that a landlord is willing to give you, for sake of example, $100 per square foot. So if you're doing a deal for 50,000 square feet, they're giving you $5 million to spend to fit out your space, and in many cases a whole year of free rent, right? You wouldn't see, I mean, you wouldn't even touch that 18 months ago. And so these institutional owners, they like, face rate is very important to them for their basis and very important to them for the value of the building. But they can give you incentives that burn off. They can give you capital infusion that burn off over time. And that's what's important to them.
Chris has another question.
Yeah.
All right, one more quick question. Thank you.
Okay, how do you see this impacting sort of some signature real estate development proposals, i.e. Zidell and the Broadway bridgehead at the old post office? What's coming with those? How are they going to morph with all of this?
That is going to take unless they are, I mean, Zidell Yards has sort of been around for a while, but unless there's a significant pre-lease commitment, I think you'd be crazy to build those, to start those with spec. I think you'd be crazy. I mean, I think, if you look at Block 216, which is right next to the Sentinel, which is where the Ritz is going to go, and it's got it has office space, and it has, the hotel space, they're supposed to deliver in 2023. I think they will deliver in 2023. But again, who's going to, you have so much other, and they're going to be top market. They're going to probably be $50 a foot in rent, right? And in that part of town, like I just, as a quick anecdote before we leave, I had a client pre-COVID that was looking for anything downtown. Like they were looking for, call it 40 to 50,000 square feet downtown. That was the focus. We kicked the can down the road, and we're up working on the project again. They want nothing to do with south of Burnside in 18 months. Wow. And they're, it'll be a long-term deal. but I mean, how quickly that changes for such a big requirement and call it, 150, 200 people, right?
Blake, I have one real quick question, then I've got to kick it back to Reed. So
Yeah.
the last question's from Patsy. She says, one of the appeals of downtown has been public transportation and bicycle access. So has that been holding up okay?
It's funny because that was a big requirement for a lot of groups that decided to go downtown. But now from a hybrid, that's changing a little bit. I think access is still important to people, but I think it's not as strong as it once was. I do think that piece will come back though. But I think people were still a little bit, skittish to jump on the max and roll through. I mean, bike is something different, but yeah.
I'm handing it back to Reed now. Thank you so much. Reed?
All right, thanks for your help, Carol. And thank you so much, Blake. I really enjoyed the presentation, learned a lot. I think that's certainly relevant to everybody right now. I found it a really interesting presentation. So I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you for putting everything together for us. And next week, we will be meeting right here back on Zoom at noon on Tuesday, September the 7th. I want to again take this opportunity to remind everyone that the club board has made the decision to cancel our in-person meeting next week. We will instead be meeting right here on Zoom for our weekly meeting. Our ultimate goal is to be together in person again as soon as possible. However, the safety of all of our members is extremely important. We are continuing to monitor several metrics, including hospitalization rates, case numbers, CDC recommendations, and state and county regulations. And we will be doing so in the coming weeks and months to figure out when we can, again, meet in person together at the Sentinel. I look forward to being able to announce our next in-person meeting. In the meantime, we will continue to meet here on Zoom on Tuesdays at noon. Please don't forget, if you have a speaker idea, please reach out to Dev Dion, who is our chair of the program committee. We are always looking for great program ideas, and our programs depend on our members taking the initiative. All right, I want to thank our guests who joined us today. Thank you to Alan for stopping in again, and thank you for being willing to pass that message back to the Lake Oswego Club about our upcoming golf tournament. Thank you, Nihad, for that announcement about our golf tournament. And thank you to our chair of the day, Will Nolan. Thank you to our speaker, Blake St. And excuse me. Thank you to Skylar. Thank you to Angel. Thank you to Carol. Thank you to Maria for your update. And anybody else I missed, I appreciate all of the help on these meetings. Thank you so much. And most importantly, thank you to our committee chairs and to our members for everything that you do for our club. As we close today's meeting, let's all remember why we're here. We serve to change lives. Let's continue to focus on the lives that we change and continue to step up and to do the right thing. Thanks again for joining. This meeting is adjourned.